Good morning, or well, good evening, everyone, or whatever time zone you are. I know there's folks coming in from US all the way to India and wherever else. So thank you for joining. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to work with EC Council. It's not my first time with doing one of these. I love doing these EC Council sessions and these tech talks, and I look forward to hopefully more in the future. So thank you for the time. It's really appreciated. I hope that you get to the takeaways on today, which is really right there on the title, which is about keeping, why the human still needs to be involved in this world of really rapid automation. It's absolutely critical. We're going to get into it. It's very important subject and principle and in application. I hope you find this, a fruitful conversation and session, and I look forward to your questions towards the back end. And if for some reason we run out of time or whatever happens, know that feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via social that level of social networks, and I'm happy to engage with folks and address any questions or just have some banter, so on and so forth. With that being said, again, my name is Eder, as Shilpa mentioned. I lead the global incident response practice here at TransUnion. We've been doing this position and the work that we do here for just about a decade or so before we became part of TransUnion. We now lead thousands of incidents across the globe. We're in a vast multitude of countries, supporting policyholders and clients with all sorts of different issues, whether it's your ransomware or phishing or bad patches, all sorts of stuff that can lead to cyber compromises, data leaks, so on and so forth. I've also spent the last 20 years in U.S. militaries, where I gained tons of experience there regarding leadership and personnel management and driving forward programs and things of that sort. So that's a little bit about me. But that's not the focus of today's talk. So let's get into it. What are we going to talk about, right? I already prefaced it a little bit by saying it's in the title, Human in the Loop, right? Which is the concept, it's a principle that's going to drive our conversation. And it's a principle that is not often talked about head on, which is why I like this topic right now. Because right now we're in this weird, interesting time where we just want to automate the world away, and for lack of better terms, right? And and of course that's me being a little facetious, but there's heavy automation at at unprecedented levels, and that's the other part too. In the past, organizations that could achieve some level of digital automation were usually reserved for enterprise, smaller enterprise, maybe some stuff in mid-market for meaningful automation because of the resources it took and the time it took and the expertise in-house that it took. But with the boom of LLMs, of large language models, and I shouldn't assume, I know the audience here pretty much are all familiar with LLMs and with machine learning or ML and so on and so forth, but I will do my best. It's a pet peeve of mine to not use acronyms or initialisms unless I define them. Okay, so I will do my best to define them, so make sure that it's friendly to everyone. I'm sure you're all familiar with the big large language models or LLM tools that are out there and how powerful they can be for not just Q&A or interactions or finding of information on the web, but just even just the automation of workflows. And that's becoming so much more popular, and for obvious reasons, right? It's a major efficiency gainer. And when you see a tool that can help you become that much better, that much more efficient, or that much more accurate sometimes, it's a no-brainer that you're going to have to move towards it, which is why the entire market and every market has gravitated towards it. But there is still a need for us, the humans, to be involved in that process. And that's really the meat and potatoes and what we're going to talk about here today and what this agenda was designed for. I hope that at the end of this, you come out with an understanding, a solid understanding of where humans are for right now most needed, in a few different scenarios where it comes about internal security operations or user management operations. That's the internal ops SOC piece, or whether it's in an IR or incident response. Again, incident response focused frame and scenario, and what are some of the kind of key takeaways that this concept of human in the loop will help you, that you can maximize for successful outcomes. So that's really what we're going to hit on, and again, in the same kind of vein or principle, I like to define things because I think it just helps set the tone, and it makes sure that the message is clear. So I pulled a definition that I thought was good for human in the loop, especially when it comes to nowadays, when it comes to technical concepts, technical tooling. There's a lot of different definitions that are, for the most part, hitting on the same stuff, right? So IBM has a great definition for it, which is what I quoted here, where it's an AI development and operational model that humans are actively involved in the machine learning cycle to train, tune, oversee systems. And I almost underscored oversee because, and added a asterisk to it, and it was a last minute decision not to do it, but I just thought it would be too much to add. But it really, in a way, deserves that, right? Overseeing is a loaded word. I think it needs to, actively managed, actively supported, even might be other terms that I think are best applicable for the concept. Okay, and I hope to giving you all this context now, because I hope that you will see the clear callbacks to it as we cover some of the other content that I prepared for you guys today. But in the end of the day, human in the loop is a core principle, and it's a new core principle because it's really driven by where technology is today and by AI primarily, right? By artificial intelligence, and it cannot be ignored, especially at for complex operations or complex organizations, right? I can see, it shouldn't be ignored, period, because there are consequences for ignoring this, no matter what kind of organization you are. You could be a single one person business. You could be a photographer, and you're implementing AI tools for workflow automations or for synthesis of data that you may be bringing in, right? Whether it's quoting or client facing interactions, so on and so forth. A human still needs to have some level of insight and oversight into that operation to ensure that you're maximizing on the efficiencies and the benefits. So even there, it's needed when you're talking about a single person business, but it's obvious that it's absolutely critical for enterprise, especially for some sort of blue chip or publicly traded, an IPO, like a publicly traded company. That's going to be material, right? Because what you do can often change markets and can also have a material impact to the company itself. So giving in all of that additional, because again, I can't overemphasize the importance of us, the human, in the process to this day. So with that, human by the loop should be by design. It really has to be by design, and it's something that leadership needs to adopt. A lot of controls that you have to put in place are workflow based when it comes to human in the loop, right? Because it's a principle to this, it's something you have to put in by design. Human in the loop is not a piece of hardware or software necessarily, right? You have to embed it into your software. And when you're doing that, ultimately, it requires, especially for large organizations, a change in culture. Because then that has to come from the top. That has to come from the leaders, ideally, so that way the culture changes consistently and in a way that's aimed at enhancing what the company is ultimately trying to deliver on. And so leaders have to adopt this concept and have to drive this concept. So that way, the controls are being placed in the right locations and are being done in the most efficient and beneficial way for the business. And of course, it would be lovely to see everyone be on the same page all the time, and having, folks at every level be driving forward successful principles and successful, by design. But the reality of the world, that's often not how it goes. And so therefore, because this is so critical, this is not something that can skip highest levels of leadership, and the folks at the C level can just not realize that this is a thing, or that's important, or not take actions, or hold accountable the folks that report to them on how they're using human by the loop principles by design. So again, very critical, important there that leaders are bought into this. Obviously, and we already mentioned this, which is why I say it's kind of obvious. Artificial intelligence, AI, is the global driver for human by in the loop, right? Automation that we've had until the last few years was usually some level of machine learning, some level of script or code-based short burst, as what I would kind of like to describe it. Short burst of automation that you can kind of daisy chain together to form like a more automated workflow. And of course, some tools do a great job of doing a lot of that in the background, and then it gives you a full kind of seamless flow of automation for certain things. But now you have this generative technology, you have this agentic technology that's really kicking things up to another level. And for now, more than ever, it means that folks have the ability at every level, from large enterprise to that single photographer example, to be able to automate all sorts of tasks away, and be able to just give up control and have things happen for that are actions that will have impact in the real world. And so that current, that's a huge driver. But the current state of the technology is, we're not at the Ultron level yet. Sorry for the Marvel reference, and for those who are not fans, but like, we're not at the what in the industry is often described as ASI, or autonomous super intelligence, or AGI, autonomous general intelligence. We're not at that level yet, and until we're there, we cannot trust the AI level technology to 100% be right 100% of the time. It's just not a thing. And we also have, there are other issues that we're going to talk about here, such as bias, such as nuance and context, which are core principles in AI, which are also translate to being core principles of why the humans have to be there, because we are the context machine. We're the ones who are going to drive that in. We're going to be the bias checkers. I know the word bias in humans, kind of make this kind of a little bit comedic in the idea that we're checking something else when we ourselves are often full of bias. But from a business standpoint, there are decisions that machines have to make that, because of the way that they're trained and what happens in pre-training and during the main training of the models, they will create some sort of operational bias quite often. And you have to have humans check that to make sure that the model's not then running just one way all the time, which is then going to be ultimately, again, there are going to be use cases where that decision process is not ideal, or will create erroneous outcomes. So that's where AI kind of the current state of market is for most of these tools, well, for pretty much all, for all of these tools. So they're not at a place yet where you can, or should at least, just blindly trust. And I don't know that we'll ever be in a place that we can blindly trust. That's a very strong burden, in my opinion. But that's just my personal view on that, and not the market. Obviously, there's a lot of folks that I think want to be in that place where you can just blindly trust it to do a lot of things. So because of that, organizations have to absolutely achieve governance over this technology, and not just because it's beneficial to them from enhancing quality or fidelity of output, but it's, organizations often have to deal with their own requirements, right? Whether it's internal governance or external governance, which is going to be compliance, regulatory or contractual, integrity of outcomes and data, and essentially that concept of fidelity, right? Like, how solid is the data and the output? Defensibility, that may not be as big of a concern for depending on where part of the world you're in. But if you're in the litigious part of the world, aka especially the most litigious place in the world, where I sit, the United States, defensibility is huge. You, as companies, have to take decisions by design that allow them to show them, in a future where something goes wrong, show that they did the right thing, or that they did the best that they could in that time, so they can defend against some level of litigation. So these are core things which require humans to be involved by design in automated workflows in one level or another. So with the kind of overview and the design context piece there, I hope that gives you the foundation so as to start talking a little bit deeper in vertical here from the main segments we wanted to talk about. A lot of you guys are aiming to go into IT ops or some sort of global technology ops, right? Maybe a SOC center, and be in that part of the defense or management of networks and or digital environments. Human in the loop still really needed here, because every company pretty much nowadays that sells some sort of software, whether it's local or SaaS solution, is utilizing AI in some capacity. And even the ones who are not using LLM type technology, they're still going to call it AI because it's accurate and because there's a marketing power behind that. So you can't escape those letters anymore. And but the point is, a lot of tooling does have enhanced or agentic capabilities, and there's a lot of network management tools, the big ones that the name of, that I don't need to name drop and will not. They're all building this technology in, because they're understanding that it can absolutely raise efficiency. It can make certain tasks that were perhaps highly repeatable or tedious be done autonomously or with minor amounts of human input compared to it being a manual process in the past. So there's in network management that it's already a very popular thing to see AI. However, if you're implementing a tool that's scraping your network for certain types of activity, as a network management tool, or an endpoint, an EDR tool, an endpoint detection response type tool, or DLP tools like data loss and prevention, right, which organizations widely use to ensure that they are limiting or eliminating as much as they can the risk of some sort of accidental data leakage or theft of data. Unfortunately, that sort of thing can happen. These tools are all being utilized, and all major providers are embedding the technology into it. And it's important that in this process we start to involve the humans, right? Because the technology may create inefficiencies, right? Because some of the security to base technology could stop users from doing legitimate work that they normally will do or have to do. If you don't have a human to say, no, this is an exception to the process, the logical thinking of the bot may simply not allow people to do certain things that they're supposed to do. It may guide decisions or workflows to outcomes that are not desirable. It may segregate parts of a network if it chose to, depending on activity that it's seeing. And segregation, while more unlikely, it could certainly create roadblocks within networks. So it's important that humans have some level of authority when it comes to major changes, when it comes to anything that's high risk or high stakes, anything that goes into sensitive data, right? AI is a phenomenal thing to have, these AI tools, but they only work if you give them access to things, right? Like they only work by when I say work, I don't mean like just literal function, but I mean like efficiency or effectiveness, right? If you give any major LLM out there access to nothing, it is not exactly a super useful tool. It only really works if you give it context, if you give it some level of agency or operational latitude, and if you give it data. You have to add it to your stuff. And that's where a lot of the risk is. One, because I can tell you, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, most companies don't actually know what data they have. They are often collecting more data than they need. They are often misstoring this data. Centralization is not as concise and tight as they think it is. And so they have data spread throughout a lot of endpoints. And you have to give the AI tool access to things, whether it's a file server or whether it's a web app or a local app, whether it's not even, whether it's pockets of data, specific folders or specific locations of information, because otherwise it just can't do the stuff that it's not going to be able to take actions that you want it to take to have that real deep meaningful impact in efficiencies. So you have to feed it data. It's just the nature of the beast, for lack of better terms. But you really should map your data and understand your data before and where everything is before you're giving these tools just kind of a user badge, right? Like an access badge into it. And in the end of the day, you also need to continue checking if the tool is now, because it's agentic, if it started to escalate its, for lack of better terms, escalate its privileges in order to accomplish tasks for users or to enhance a workflow. And so decisions, that kind of user management has to have humans say, otherwise you're going to run the risk that the tool is going to end up creating an environment where it'll either shut off people from things that they need, or it's going to just start spreading data across, places where certain information shouldn't be accessible by or, be stored in. And that can create major issues, right? From not just the management of your operation, but that can create liability issues, that can create data leakage issues. That in itself can make risks of data leaks via certain types of attack vectors like prompt injection more prevalent. It really can change your risk landscape. And if you're a compliance heavy organization, your regulators are going to want to know how you're implementing these tools. How are you ensuring that these tools are resulting in net positives, and how they impact your risk management essentially, and the chances that something bad can occur. All of this stuff requires some level of human check to make sure that the logical thinking of machine remains logical in an effective way, to make sure that it's not creating certain biases towards specific types of workflow, and that it is still doing to the letter or as close to the letter of what your intent it was for it to do in the beginning. And then again, I added a bullet there on defensibility as a standalone again, because it is absolutely critical more than ever that we show our work. Here at least, and I grew up in Brazil, and it was common there too. So I don't know if it's common on everywhere that all of you are coming from today. But in math class, there was always this concept of like show the work, right? Like you can't just give an answer. You got to write out your long form division or your multiplication tables, whatever, so on and so forth. That's in principle, that's what we're talking about here. And that's so important nowadays, more than ever, because the technology is advancing much faster than anything else is. So it's faster than the legal system, it's faster than the judicial system, right? And not just the regulatory system. So the rest of the world is just kind of catching up. And more than ever, are people going to raise questions or point fingers, whatever, and create situations where you as an organization may have to defend yourself and say, well, this is all the stuff that we did to keep this technology in check. This is where all the humans are tied in. This is what the policies we put in place to try to eliminate bias. These are the decisions that are the highest risk or the most critical. This is how we're checking the machine to ensure that we're delivering the right way. This is how we're making sure that we're not violating any regulatory statutes where it comes to hosting of data, manipulation of data, usage of data. all these things, you need to show your work, and that's going to become more important than ever as folks automate workflows, because the process of automation is the process in some ways of letting go of control. And the more control you let go, the less eyes you have on something, and then it creates a bigger opportunity for it to kind of get out of your hands. Additionally, you still have to preserve evidence for investigations. And if everything is automated, you have to remember that that's processing and storage of data, and storage is not unlimited unless you have unlimited resources, and no one has unlimited resources, right? And it can get very expensive. And so memory for AI is a well-known issue when it, that it often needs more memory, not just for efficiency, but also for auditing purposes. So preserving evidence is often reserved still to humans, to have that level of oversight on automated operations to ensure that certain types of data are being pulled out and are being stored in the event that you have a need to probe or investigate that information. So that's how a lot of human, in the loop works in internal ops and in SOCs, right? You're going to have users doing things that the machines are going to either allow, not allow, enhance, less enhance, and that's going to require human intervention. Bias checks going to require human intervention. Use cases that are rare or anomalous, that's often going to result in error, because if the LLM is not trained for to kind of take, like, it's not trained to be able to handle that anomaly, the training may now be a flaw, and so it may completely analyze something wrong. These tools still hallucinate, meaning they make stuff up sometimes, especially depending where the training data is coming from or what other information it has access, has the ability to access when it's processing user requests or prompts. All of this stuff can result in just fake information. And of course, I think that kind of goes without saying. That's a problem, and it's something that we have to be highly concerned about. When we're talking about responding to incidents, right? When we're talking about IR, integrity of information is incredibly important, right? If you're doing incident response, it's because something, for lack of better terms, negative occurred, right? And you now need to find out information about an incident, about an event, and you need to often report that information to partners, clients, regulators, you name it. And so the integrity of your data is absolutely crucial, right? To ensure that your data is legitimate. And when you say, yes, somebody entered network at this exact hour from this IP address, like that, you have to live on that. You have to have a high level of degree of confidence in that information if you're going to make certain statements. And if you have a lot of automation throughout your environment, or if you're deploying, detection tools and response to, IR tools that have AI tools behind, technology behind it, you have to make sure that, especially at enterprise, when it's collecting vast amounts of data, vast amounts of traffic, so many users coming in and out, and users are being added and removed, and so on and so forth, that it's not going to hallucinate a result of, oh, this IP had a connection to this endpoint or something, under the same scenario or hypothetical. That's just one random, kind of hypothetical here, but the point is you have to control the hallucinations, right, in order to achieve integrity. You also have to control false positives, right? These tools are known to provide a decent amount of false positives, because the training data doesn't always correspond with the reality of the data inputs that are coming into the tool. And so if it doesn't always mesh so well, because the technology is not super intelligent yet, or doesn't have that level of general intelligence, it can only stick to kind of what it knows, for lack of better terms, and what it was trained on, and the protocols that are built in. And so you can have a new line of business, or a new type of work that a certain few staff members need to do, or something of that sort, and it may see that as malicious, but it really isn't, and thus creating a bunch of false positives. So it is an issue that, again, requires humans to be the tiebreaker. Is this a legitimate activity or a legitimate output, or is this an output that is inaccurate because of other extenuating circumstances? Humans are still very much so needed for that. We've talked a bit about preservation, I think, sufficiently to kind of drive the point home. But what I think is most critical to continue talking about here is how crucial is context, right? We're training these tools, which are kind of based on at the most core level, right? And the idea of kind of just adding to wording, adding to knowledge, adding to data, adding to information. So context is so crucial. For those of you guys using every day using LLM, especially from the big providers, I'm sure you notice that your outputs are drastically different when you feed a very context heavy prompt that's really detailed and provides everything the tool kind of needs. And especially if you start then having conversations with it, you're asking it questions, having to ask you questions, so on and so forth, because that again creates the addition of context into the work product that you're trying to create. And that's when you get the best results, right? So to get the most out of it, you have to feed it context, because it has a massive billions upon billions of data points that it was trained on, and it's arguably too much data. And so you're going to make it a request, and any one single request you're giving, it's looking at so much information that if you want the best request, you have to feed it context. I tell people all the time, if you have AI writing you emails, that's great. It could be a huge time saver depending on what you do for a living, but you can't just trust that, oh, well, this email would have taken me 20 minutes to write and now I can send it off. Whereas now it takes 2 minutes and I can send it off. Well, it probably should take you closer to, 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending how long it is, how big of fast of a reader you are, how much of a subject matter expert you are, and whatever it is you're talking about, right? Because you have to spend more time editing. You have to spend more time checking the output, making sure your tone is still there, and so it doesn't sound like it's not you, not just from a security purpose, but just from even a relationship purpose. Making sure that it's driving the message you want home, making sure it didn't hallucinate, making sure that it's organized in a way that's friendly to you and that makes it friendly to the audience, so whoever's going to be on the receiving end. All those things require that human in the loop, require that human output. So this is, AI usage right now requires heavy-handed amounts of editing. And often I think folks are too quick to not want to edit and just workflow automate away. And it's a problem, because speed enhancements are great and they're critical, right? Which is why these technologies are even created, right? We want to reduce, issues across the board. We want to, increase the ability of getting things done faster. But you have to still provide solid quality work product. Again, in an IR sense, speed enhancements can reduce your business interruption. It can which then can reduce reputational losses or other exposures that are out there when you're under the gun. But again, you still have to make sure the product is tight. So ultimately, this is the stuff that this is part of what I hope you guys take away from this conversation today. Human in the loop is a non-negotiable especially if you're going to use up-to-date tooling, because up-to-date tooling nowadays just comes with some level of AI or machine learning. It's just where the market tends to be. So you have to adopt this into policy. Your leadership has to be bought in, because putting humans into an automated process for some folks may be a frustration point. And when folks are, when people become frustrated with certain things, or they don't like a workflow because, they don't want to be involved in certain parts of it and they wish that they could just give it away, give that control away, they will do that, because that's the path to least resistance. It's kind of a little bit of human nature, and it's max efficiency. However, it's also increasing your risk profile. And ultimately, the buck stops at the top, and especially when it comes to risk, compliance, governance. And so your leadership really needs to be dialed in to begin a cultural journey to evolve your staff into thinking about how do I create all of these efficiencies? How do we maximize these efficiencies? But how do we check it to ensure it still achieves all our goals and keeps our risk profile, ideally lowers your risk profile. These AI tools and automation of workflows can absolutely lower your risk profiles if you're building them properly, if you're putting the right principles by design, if you're implementing the right tooling, if you're implementing the right culture. It can absolutely be incredible for organizations. It can really be, it really is bringing small orgs especially, or all orgs, to just a whole other level. And so I get why we're going to keep using this. It's amazing, but we still have to make sure that we're applying the right security stuff as we're building it. So map your threats. Okay, mapping is just becoming such a crucial word in this world because, again, data is that new perimeter, and especially when you're giving an automated agentic creature or entity access to your stuff. And so you have to map everything, and you have to map your threats. Okay, well, now we have this tool, and this tool has the ability to touch this data, and this tool can be accessed by these people, and this tool can also access this other stuff that's outside. What are the new threats now that we have that we didn't have before we implemented this technology? And you have to proactively manage those threats. Otherwise, somebody will take advantage of them eventually, and you're going to have to reactively manage those threats. And it's always less stressful, less painful to manage issues proactively than reactively. And then finally, and again, show your work. More crucial than ever, as I mentioned, and for all the reasons, not only because it's going to help your governance, it's going to help with transparency and clarity with your workforce, it's going to help you dealing with when things inevitably go wrong, dealing with regulators, dealing with partners, dealing with clients, whoever you have contractual relationships with. A lot of companies are building in contractual duties around the management of these tools, because of the power that these tools have to deal with data and deal with workflows. So showing your work and documenting what your automation is and what it's doing, what it should be doing, and how it's doing it, how you're checking it, more critical than ever. So hope you guys found this session informative and useful. Happy to talk to you guys about anything in the future again, but especially this subject. Again, thank you for your time. It's really appreciated. It's always a pleasure to do these with EC Council. How do you question if it's adding just manual workload? Some of that's a little obvious, right? If you're creating an automated workflow, it could, in its face, be automating whatever it is that the human tasks, right? So if you needed to review, I don't know, a contract and give you a summary because you're a contract manager or something, and then perhaps send emails out to specific people, you could certainly create a workflow where it scrapes the document, tells you what changes were made, gives you a summary of it, and automatically opens an email and includes that contact, that contract in the email. That in itself is an automation, right? And it's pretty material. So if you have an agreement come in, then put it through the process, and 2 minutes later you have it in there, and it's a 10-page contract. Well, how long would it take you to read that? So that it's automating some things. So some of that's a little obvious, right? The thing about the manual usage of controls, if you have to understand what you were doing before you automated it. Right. So if you're going to automate a task that takes 5 minutes to do, it better be a pretty low risk, highly repeatable task, I hope, right? Because that's where a lot of the technology is going to shine. And then, the chances to get it wrong are going to be hopefully none. But of course, you still have to check it. But how long does it take to check it? Because if it takes you 10 minutes to check it and it used to be a 5-minute manual task, then perhaps the automation isn't worth it, right? But if it's something that takes you 30 seconds to check and it's a 5-minute task, and you do that 5-minute task 15 times 20 times a day, then you just saved yourself probably half an hour in your you used a half hour to save 2+ hours, right? So in my opinion, that's probably a pretty worthy thing to automate. So you have to make that kind of decision. You can't try to automate everything because it doesn't always make sense. You have to use a little bit of logic and common sense as you go into it, and understanding if you're spending too much time checking the bot, that's a matter of, again, time management. Some decisions might be critical enough that you need to have your ability to say, okay, this is how we got to this. This is how we got to the next stage. This is how we got to the stage after that. This is how we made this decision. That makes no sense to me. I can approve this action and move it on to the next piece. If that's something that doing manually would have taken you an entire day, but now it took you an hour, that's still a major efficiency gain, right? So it's a tough question to give you I hope that was a direct enough answer. But it's going to be use case, but you just have to kind of apply logic to the, like, how you're looking into whether the juice is worth the squeeze, for lack of better terms. It could, could human in the loop processes result in something dramatic? I mean, it could, depending, one, if the humans get the decision wrong. We're not infallible, right? Quite the opposite. We make errors all the time. If the humans become a funnel where that slows down a process or the ability to respond to a process, right? If you are, if you're kind of, having a user management issue, and what that user needs to do is absolutely critical in time, and under a time crunch, a timetable of sorts, and your human check principle makes them blow a deadline, that could be a problem. Could be a dramatic thing, which is why, again, these principles and these checks, just like the automation itself, it needs to have oversight by not just the people that are going, at creation. Like, you have to design it. You have to take the time to have the right conversations, to test it, right? You gotta, you should be testing things before you just roll it out into production. You have to go still through all those stages of an implementation of something, if you're going to do it in the lowest risk, most efficient manner possible, because you have to understand what are your chances of your own interactions causing issues. What are your ability to check these workflows, right? Do you have 3 people having to be involved in decisions that may be impossible to do in a workday for 3 people? Well, you're setting yourself up for failure at that point, right? So you have to weight those things, into it, because as we use these efficiency tools, what ends up happening, not often, but pretty much every time, right, is that if you do something that's more efficient and now you just gain 30 minutes in your day, you're probably going to fill that 30 minutes with some other work or other tasks, right? And so if you're automating a ton of stuff across network and you have a security team that's 2-3 people, which is not uncommon, especially in smaller entities, and now they gain some efficiency in rolling out some of their processes, but they earn the duties of having to check on, being involved in the loop for checking on a bunch of user activity. That, because you are going to have more users than you're going to have support staff, that user activity, those checks may require an additional staff person. But, is the payroll spent on that additional staff person, training, so on and so forth, are those burdens perhaps worth what may be hundreds, if not thousands of man hours you save on the other side of the operation? Yeah, probably. Again, these are decisions that's why you need leadership involvement, right? Because as you turn up a knob of volume in one thing, you may have to turn it down or turn it up on another thing as well to achieve an efficient balance and the level of efficiency that you need in your organization. So hope that addresses it. It's a yes in many different ways. It's a nuanced, it's a kind of a big question with a lot of different nuances that can be applied in answers. Ensure human accountability. So some of that's going to be in design, right, in the process. So as you create workflows, you create these processes, you have to create checks and balances for the people, right? You have to be able to check folks and what they're doing, and you have to have leaders that are going to hold people accountable. That's going to, of course, always be a thing, and you also have to look at results, right? Often when you are talking about involving people in decision-making roles in automated processes, are you receiving the desired outcomes? If the outcomes are hitting exactly where you want them to hit, then you know that decisions that, you know, the involvement that humans are having is net positive. So at a bare minimum, you need to check for a net positive, net negative. And that's going to be outcome driven for the most part. Of course, you can also put KPIs in place. You can put you can put other, with different softwares and solutions, you can check how quick people are responding to certain things or doing their piece of the human in the loop, action on the workflow. So there's a lot of ways of kind of holding people accountable and tracking what activity they're doing, and it can be as light as just in policy or something you talk to people about, or it could be as heavy as having, monitoring it at the endpoint level, to just checking decisions and tracking clicks and so on and so forth, right? A lot of companies deploy that kind of pretty invasive technology into managing their people, and it's for whatever reasons that they feel are important that they need to do that. So that's going to be a very use case specific, how to, for lack of better terms. Okay. But that was the question, right? How do you do it? So that's how, you got to, again, take it on your use case. These tools are, for the most part, pretty use case dependent. They're going to give you, they're going to give you different levels of output support or effectivity, like effectiveness gains, based on the different use cases. There are some things are best designed, these tools really excel at, some things they don't. So it's very use case dependent and use case heavy right now. So keep that in mind as you design these programs or have a say in designing these programs, whether that's in logging, ticketing, whether that's in, it could be as manual as data entry about what decisions you made, keeping a ledger of some sort. But the systems themselves will see, as you automate workflows, as you map that workflow, and the log data should show you this, right? So if you're looking at the log data behind your model, you at some point will see the user say, yes, do this, or the user say, no, don't do that. Yes, this is approved, this is not approved, so on and so forth. So you are certainly showing at least input into the system. Now, if you're trying to go a level past that, if you're looking at explainability as far as how did the human get to its decision, that's going to be policy driven, right? Because it's based on your training, right? It's going to be based on the variables surrounding that decision and the use case. And a lot of that might, some of that may come down to logic. That's where you have, there's some risk there, because it's, of course, people are going to do what they're supposed to do for the most part, right? Where you train them to do for the most part. But maybe they're, maybe it's a rogue actor, or maybe somebody's just having a bad day. They're having an off day and they make the wrong call. People make wrong calls all the time. I'll give you this in principle and philosophy. I just think it's important to of a principle to talk about for a second. I'll spend a few seconds on this. There's no such thing as error-free. There's no such thing as 100% as perfection, or as, what the perfect is the imperfect, right? I forgot what philosopher said that, right? But the idea is so true. There's no perfect. You can't expect anything to be 100% error-free all the time. If that's your bar for implementing anything, then you implement nothing. There's no efficiency, there's no gain. You are frozen, because nothing will ever be that perfect, right? I hear this concept when people talk about autonomous vehicles all the time. Oh, it's never going to become a thing until it's 100% safe. It's no such thing. Computers fail. It's going to happen. The difference is whether, is your risk of having the car accident now, what it is now, or is it 30% less, 20% less, 80% less, 90% less? It's never going to be 100. And are we comfortable then giving away that control at 80 or at 90 or 70? Where are we comfortable making those decisions? That is a principle that applies across everything, and it certainly applies here. Your people are going to make errors in the loop. Your bots are going to make errors. Errors will happen. Like, issues will happen. It is inevitable. It is just the nature of the universe. You just have to make enough plans, account for them, have the right training, create the right cultures, create the right things to deal with that when it happens. And even then, it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be smooth. It's just new stuff happens, nuances happen. So don't forget that, as you know, because that's a question based on an assumption of perfection, and there is no such thing. Thank you for the time, folks. I think we talked about so many like big principles here today, especially with some of that Q&A. We went a little deep there. We are in wild times, and in the best ways, and and sometimes not the best ways, but there's so much going on right now. Arguably too much for any one person. Yes, not arguably, I think it's unarguably too much for one person to be the know-it-all or to hoard in all the information. So you're gonna have to focus on a lot of things and decide what you want to spend time on, because your time is way more finite than the amount of information and data that's out there and the stuff that's being done with in the world out there. So focus on the stuff that you need to focus, stay the course. It's a fascinating world we're in. I think so much cool stuff is happening with technology right now, and you get to just do things so differently. It's really exciting, and I think it really creates an environment that it's empowering to the daily user. And so, have fun with the stuff that's out there. Have fun creating, have fun changing the game, have fun moving pushing the needle forward. Don't forget your core principles. Your core stuff is core for a reason. I do a lot of threat intelligence briefing, and it's incredible how focused folks are on the new shiny thing, and often to their detriment, where they're starting to forget some of the core stuff that they still need to pay attention to. Don't make those mistakes, because they will bite you in the behind. But enjoy the ride. There's a lot of fun to be had with the stuff that we're playing, that we have, the tools we have to play with nowadays. I hope you found this information. Thank you, Apple. I hope you found this information, good and useful and fun. And this is a good time. I look forward to doing more of these. And again, if you guys would want to reach out online, happy to connect with you guys and talk. All right. Thank you for your time. So much appreciated.